The Levant has long been a theater of human ambition and enduring rivalry, where geography and history converge to shape conflict, strategy, and political ambition. In this region, the relationship between Israel and Syria represents one of the most enduring antagonisms in modern history, rooted in territorial disputes, ideological opposition, and strategic competition. From the earliest years following Israel's creation in 1948 to the contemporary era, the northern frontier has remained a locus of military vigilance and periodic confrontation. In the 21st century, the hostility between these two nations found particular expression in a series of calculated Israeli raids on Syrian territory. These operations were neither incidental nor sporadic. They reflected a strategic doctrine of preemption, precision, and deterrence, framed by decades of historical enmity and heightened by the upheaval of the Syrian civil war. The raids were carried out across urban landscapes scarred by conflict. Rural corridors that threaded through mountains and deserts, and contested airspace monitored by increasingly sophisticated air defense systems. Each strike left behind both immediate destruction and longer-term ramifications that reverberated across regional politics, humanitarian conditions, and military strategy. Israel's rationale for these operations was clear. The consolidation of Iranian and Hezbollah forces within Syria represented an unacceptable threat, particularly when these forces were transferring advanced weaponry or establishing infrastructure that could endanger Israel's northern cities. The Syrian civil war created both the opportunity and the necessity for intervention, as the collapse of centralized authority allowed foreign forces and militias to entrench themselves with relative impunity. The raids, therefore, were not merely acts of tactical aggression. They were preemptive measures designed to preserve Israel's strategic advantage while sending a clear signal to adversaries regarding the costs of entrenchment near its borders. The enmity between Israel and Syria has deep historical roots. The Arab-Israeli wars of the mid-20th century established a foundation of territorial and ideological rivalry. Syria's involvement in the 1948 war against Israel, coupled with its subsequent opposition to Israel's creation, set a precedent of antagonism that would persist for decades. The 1967 Six-Day War and Israel's capture of the Golan Heights exacerbated the territorial dispute, embedding the conflict within the psyche of both nations. Syrian national pride and the desire to reclaim lost territory became intertwined with broader regional rivalries, particularly the ideological contest between Arab nationalism and the nascent Israeli state. Throughout the Cold War, Syria aligned itself with the Soviet Union, strengthening its military capabilities and deepening its ideological opposition to Israel. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Damascus also became increasingly linked with Tehran, further complicating the strategic landscape. Iran's support for proxy groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, combined with its growing presence in Syria, created a direct line of threat to Israel's northern border. These historical factors underpinned a long-standing Israeli strategy of vigilance and preemptive action, emphasizing deterrence, intelligence-based targeting, and surgical strikes to prevent the consolidation of hostile capabilities. The eruption of the Syrian civil war in 2011 created conditions that Israel interpreted as both a challenge and an opportunity. With Damascus's control weakened, Iranian forces and their proxies could establish positions and infrastructure that were previously denied by a strong central government. Israel's preemptive doctrine found renewed justification. Any entrenchment of these forces could fundamentally alter the balance of power in the Levant and pose existential risks to northern Israel. Each raid was thus a calculated decision, blending strategic foresight with tactical opportunity. The first notable wave of Israeli raids in the post-Arab Spring era began in 2013, a period marked by both regional instability and the early consolidation of Iranian influence in Syria. Intelligence indicated that convoys carrying advanced weaponry were moving from Iranian supply lines in Syria toward Hezbollah-controlled territories in Lebanon. In response, Israeli jets conducted their first known precision strikes under the cover of night, focusing on the Kalamun Mountains and surrounding desert passes. The geography of the Kalamun region amplified both the strategic opportunities and the risks of these early raids. Rugged mountain ridges provided natural concealment for weapons convoys. Yet these same ridges created predictable transit routes that could be exploited by precision targeting. Israeli aircraft, flying at high altitudes to avoid radar detection, descended through these corridors with remarkable precision. The explosions reverberated across valleys, sending cascades of rock and dust into the night sky. Civilians in nearby villages, already traumatized by the civil war, experienced sudden concussions and tremors that shattered the relative quiet of the mountainous region. The night sky was intermittently illuminated by fiery plumes rising from storage depots, painting a stark contrast against the darkened silhouettes of hills and towns. Damascus, the political and logistical hub of Syrian military operations, also became a target in these early engagements. Suburbs housing depots suspected of missile components or chemical precursors were struck with surgical precision. Residents recount the surreal juxtaposition of modern military technology with densely populated urban streets. The crackle of distant explosions blending with the distant hum of life. The sudden rise of smoke and fire in industrial sectors, and the sudden chaos as people fled toward open streets and alleys. Each strike disrupted the transfer of materials to Hezbollah, while signaling Israel's willingness to operate decisively in Syria. During this period, the operational patterns were as much psychological as tactical. Convoys intercepted in remote passes left visible craters and wreckage along rural roads. Debris from targeted depots often blocked critical routes, forcing both military and civilian traffic to detour through increasingly dangerous terrain. For local populations, the raids introduced a pervasive sense of vulnerability. Schools, markets, and residential areas, though not direct targets, felt the echoes of each strike, embedding a psychological weight that compounded the ongoing effects of civil war. From an operational standpoint, these early raids revealed Israel's growing confidence in precision-guided munitions and nighttime targeting. Pilots navigated airspace monitored by Syrian radar installations, relying on electronic countermeasures to evade detection. Ground-based air defenses occasionally responded, though they were largely ineffective against fast, high-flying Israeli jets. This period established the tactical and strategic pattern that would characterize subsequent years. A combination of high intelligence fidelity, precise targeting, and careful management of risk to minimize Israeli casualties while achieving disruption of adversary capabilities. The human toll, though limited compared to later periods, was significant in terms of local disruption. Civilian populations were displaced temporarily from nearby villages, and psychological trauma spread through communities witnessing explosions, craters, and sudden evacuations. Urban infrastructure in Damascus's periphery sustained damage to industrial zones, transport hubs, and storage facilities. Beyond the immediate destruction, the raids signaled to Iranian and Hezbollah forces that their entrenchment in Syria would be contested, establishing a precedent for a long-term campaign of preemptive strikes. By 2014, Israeli operations had become more sophisticated. Surveillance drones provided near real-time intelligence, allowing planners to identify vulnerable points in supply chains and depots. Strikes targeted warehouses, missile assembly areas, and critical junctions along transport routes. In Damascus, targeted explosions occasionally ignited secondary fires in chemical storage areas or industrial warehouses, amplifying the destructive impact. The urban landscape was punctuated with smoke columns rising intermittently, while streets became corridors of uncertainty, littered with debris and echoing the tremors of distant blasts. The raids of 2013 to 2014 were the opening act of a prolonged operational campaign. They demonstrated the capacity for precision strikes within contested airspace, the integration of intelligence and tactical execution, and the ability to disrupt enemy capabilities without triggering a full-scale retaliatory conflict. At the same time, they left a lasting mark on Syria's urban and rural geography, the civilian psyche, and the operational calculus of adversaries. By 2015, the Syrian civil war had evolved into a complex and multi-layered conflict, a fragmented battleground where government forces, insurgent militias, jihadist factions, and foreign powers intersected across cities, deserts, and mountains. In this environment, Israel's raids extended both in scope and frequency, reflecting the escalating strategic importance of Syria's western corridor and the growing entrenchment of Iranian and Hezbollah forces. These 2 years marked a period of tactical adaptation, operational sophistication, and heightened civilian exposure to military violence. The first months of 2015 were dominated by intelligence reports indicating a significant buildup of Iranian-backed infrastructure near Damascus, Homs, and along the Syrian-Lebanese border. Missile depots, weapons stockpiles, and command facilities were being reinforced, often concealed within industrial areas or suburban districts. Israel, committed to preempting any permanent entrenchment of hostile forces, intensified reconnaissance operations. Drones and satellite imagery provided a mosaic of logistical networks, supply routes, and storage facilities, revealing the arteries along which arms were moving from Iran and Syria into Hezbollah-controlled Lebanon. The raids themselves became increasingly audacious. Aircraft would penetrate Syrian airspace under the cover of darkness, guided by a combination of intelligence, electronic countermeasures, and real-time surveillance. The geography of strikes ranged from the rugged arid passes of Homs's western mountains to the suburban outskirts of Damascus, where warehouses and industrial compounds had become repositories for weapons. Each mission demanded precise navigation. A fraction of a second error could result in striking the wrong building or triggering civilian casualties. In the Kalamoon region, nighttime raids targeted heavily guarded convoys. Pilots maneuvered between the jagged contours of mountain ridges. The engines of their aircraft muted to reduce detection. From the air, the valleys below appeared as patchworks of darkened towns, clusters of warehouses, and scattered villages. When bombs struck, the resulting explosions sent rocks tumbling down slopes, igniting fires that painted the mountains in flickering orange light. Smoke spiraled upward, caught in the stark contrast of a moonless sky, while the echoes of detonation rolled across the valleys, carrying both terror and a clear signal of strategic intent. Urban zones faced a different kind of vulnerability. In the outskirts of Damascus, depots and storage sites were integrated within industrial parks and commercial districts. The sudden arrival of Israeli aircraft transformed the night into chaos. Blasts shattered windows, ignited fuel tanks, and left streets littered with debris. For residents, the strikes were surreal. Markets emptied abruptly, schools closed prematurely, and neighborhoods that had survived months of insurgent activity now faced a new, precise, and technologically sophisticated threat. The smell of scorched concrete and metal lingered long after the explosions, mingling with the familiar scent of urban dust and smoke from burning vehicles. Throughout 2015, the strikes also extended to western Syria, near Latakia, and along key transport routes connecting central Syria to the Mediterranean coast. These strikes targeted infrastructure critical to Iranian supply lines, including temporary storage facilities disguised as civilian warehouses and industrial compounds. The precision of the raids was such that the buildings themselves were often reduced to skeletal frames, while nearby civilian structures were spared the worst of the damage. A testament to the careful intelligence and planning behind each operation. Yet even limited damage created a ripple effect. Transportation routes were disrupted. Electricity and water infrastructure suffered collateral impact, and civilians were forced to adapt to the constant threat of sudden bombardment. 2016 represented a period of operational evolution. Israel's strategy began to emphasize the degradation of Syrian air defense systems, which had become increasingly fortified with Russian-supplied technology. Raids were planned to first disable radar and anti-aircraft batteries, creating corridors for subsequent operations targeting missile depots and supply facilities. This approach required extraordinary precision. Pilots navigated hostile airspace where radar could detect even minor deviations. Electronic countermeasures were required to confuse surface-to-air missile systems, and intelligence teams coordinated in real time to ensure that targets were correctly identified and civilian exposure minimized. The visual and psychological impact of these raids on the ground was profound. In cities like Homs, entire industrial districts were reduced to rubble. Concrete walls cracked, metal frames twisted, and roads pocked with craters. Dust filled the air, blurring vision and making navigation treacherous. Residents spoke of nights illuminated by the glow of distant fires, punctuated by the deafening concussions of blasts. The psychological weight was compounded by the unpredictable timing of attacks. Alarms could sound in the middle of the night, leaving families scrambling for safety in streets already damaged by months of civil war. In addition to urban and industrial zones, the rural expanse of Syria became a recurring site of Israeli strikes. Convoys transporting weapons through open plains, desert roads, and sparsely populated areas were prime targets. The long, straight desert corridors, often lined with low vegetation or isolated farmsteads, offered limited concealment. Here, the visual drama of Israeli raids was stark. Plumes of dust and smoke rising from strikes, vehicles overturned and ablaze, and the silhouettes of mountains and distant villages punctuating a landscape suddenly scarred by violence. The impact was immediate. Supply chains were disrupted, military assets destroyed, and local communities reminded that conflict had reached even remote corners of the country. The human dimension of the raids cannot be overstated. Although Israel aimed to minimize civilian casualties, the cumulative effect of repeated strikes created widespread displacement, anxiety, and disruption. Families abandoned homes near industrial and military zones. Roads became corridors of avoidance, and local economies, already decimated by civil war, were further strained. For civilians, the distinction between military and non-military zones blurred. Depots and warehouses often coexisted alongside marketplaces, schools, and homes, making the threat omnipresent and inescapable. Operationally, the raids forced Syrian and Iranian-aligned forces to adapt. Supply depots were relocated, often to more remote or fortified sites. Convoys traveled at irregular intervals and under cover of night, complicating Israeli targeting but also increasing logistical risk for the transporters. Air defenses were dispersed and camouflaged, while command networks sought to increase redundancy to survive further strikes. Each Israeli raid produced immediate tactical gains, yet it also reshaped the operational environment, compelling adversaries to evolve, adapt, and disperse. By late 2016, the expansion of Israeli raids had crystallized into a continuous pattern. Preemptive strikes targeting weapons and infrastructure, careful degradation of Syrian air defenses, and persistent disruption of logistical networks. The cumulative effect was clear. Iranian and Hezbollah forces were unable to consolidate resources in Syria, transfer advanced weaponry efficiently, or establish permanent infrastructure without facing immediate consequences. Civilians bore the cost through disrupted lives, damaged infrastructure, and the constant psychological burden of unpredictable aerial attacks. In sum, the 2015 to 2016 period marked the transformation of Israeli raids from episodic strikes into a sustained operational campaign. The combination of precision targeting, technological adaptation, and strategic foresight enabled Israel to shape the battlefield in Syria despite the chaos of civil war. Mountains, plains, and urban neighborhoods became stages for modern aerial warfare, each strike leaving visible scars on the landscape and invisible marks on the psyche of those who witnessed them. This period set the foundation for the high-intensity campaigns that would follow in the subsequent years, demonstrating the efficacy of preemptive, intelligence-driven military operations, while simultaneously highlighting the human and infrastructural costs inherent in sustained conflict. By 2017, the Syrian battlefield had transformed into a multi-layered landscape of chaos, opportunity, and danger. The civil war had left the Syrian state fragmented, with government forces holding pockets of territory, insurgent militias controlling urban districts, and Iranian-backed groups and Hezbollah, operating both openly and covertly throughout the Western Corridor. For Israel, this environment demanded a shift from episodic raids to high-intensity, strategically integrated campaigns that could disrupt enemy capabilities while managing the risks of escalation, particularly given the presence of Russian air defense systems. The initial months of 2017 saw Israeli operations concentrate on Damascus and its surrounding suburbs, where intelligence indicated the densest accumulation of Iranian military infrastructure. Facilities suspected of storing precision-guided missiles, advanced rocket components, and chemical precursors were embedded within industrial zones and residential outskirts. From the air, these suburbs appeared as a labyrinth of warehouses, apartment complexes, and factories, an intricate urban puzzle where precision was paramount. Israeli pilots navigated this complexity with advanced targeting systems, relying on real-time intelligence, electronic countermeasures, and careful timing to avoid civilian casualties while striking high-value targets. The raids themselves had become more frequent and coordinated. Night after night, the low hum of Israeli aircraft could be detected by residents in Damascus, Homs, and Aleppo. The sky, intermittently lit by flares and explosions, became a theater of high-stakes precision. Buildings housing missile depots were reduced to skeletal frameworks, with twisted metal and shattered concrete littering streets. Fires erupted in industrial compounds, the acrid scent of burning fuel and chemicals mixing with dust and debris. Streets became impassable corridors, forcing residents to navigate precariously through rubble while smoke from distant strikes hung in the air, blurring the once familiar urban landscape. Simultaneously, the operational focus expanded to Syrian air defenses, which had grown more sophisticated with Russian assistance. To ensure the efficacy of subsequent strikes, Israeli pilots employed tactical innovations: electronic jamming to blind radar systems, precision bombing to disable specific batteries, and synchronized attacks to overwhelm defense networks. In several instances, air defense units fired upon Israeli jets but failed to neutralize the attackers, underscoring the technological asymmetry and the growing mastery of Israel's aerial operations. Beyond urban centers, Israeli raids penetrated the rugged mountains of Kalamun and the plains of Homs, targeting supply convoys and storage depots. The geography of these regions intensified the visual and physical impact of strikes. Mountain ridges funneled dust and debris into deep valleys, amplifying the sound of explosions. Convoys struck on desert roads erupted in plumes of smoke, while vehicles caught fire and tumbled down slopes. The barren landscape, usually silent and vast, was momentarily transformed into a scene of concentrated destruction. Civilians living in nearby villages, accustomed to sporadic warfare, now confronted a persistent, technologically advanced threat that could strike with precision and vanish before a response could be mounted. The psychological impact of these high-intensity campaigns was profound. Families living in industrial suburbs or mountain villages experienced a constant state of alertness. The unpredictable timing of strikes meant that residents could never be certain when their surroundings might erupt into chaos. Markets emptied suddenly, streets were abandoned at night, and children learned to associate the hum of aircraft with imminent danger. Even when civilians were not directly harmed, the visual and auditory effects of the raids, explosions, smoke plumes, crumbling walls, imposed a lasting burden on mental health and daily routines. Industrial zones became recurring targets. Warehouses storing missile components, research equipment, and weapons-grade materials were systematically destroyed, often leaving surrounding structures intact but rendering entire logistics networks inoperative. The fires and explosions from these raids illuminated urban skylines, creating surreal scenes in which the familiar geometry of city blocks was overlaid with the chaos of fire and debris. Streets became rivers of smoke, and the faint orange glow of distant fires was visible across neighborhoods, serving as both a warning and a demonstration of operational reach. Israeli operations during 2017 to 2018 also emphasized preemptive disruption of enemy communications and command structures. Intelligence indicated that Iranian advisors were coordinating arms transfers and instructing local militias in missile deployment. Israeli strikes targeted key nodes in this network, including command centers and storage hubs. The visual footprint of these operations was stark. Once bustling industrial compounds reduced to rubble, vehicles overturned, and communications towers toppled or damaged. These actions not only delayed logistical operations, but also forced adversaries to disperse and adapt, creating a pattern of ongoing vulnerability and uncertainty. In the rural expanses, strikes were equally dramatic. Convoys moving along desert roads or through open plains were intercepted with precision-guided munitions. Explosions sent vehicles tumbling and igniting fires, while smoke plumes rose in twisted columns against the open sky. Mountain passes amplified the sound of blasts, carrying them across valleys and villages. The landscape, usually quiet and unyielding, became a canvas for sudden violence, illustrating both the technological sophistication of Israeli operations and the fragility of supply networks in contested terrain. The cumulative effect of these raids was not limited to immediate tactical disruption. Syrian and Iranian forces were forced to rethink deployment strategies, relocate depots, and harden infrastructure. Convoys traveled at irregular intervals, often at night, and under heavy camouflage. Urban planners and industrial managers were compelled to adapt, integrating concealment and redundancy to preserve operations. Even as Israel achieved temporary operational superiority, the conflict's dynamic nature ensured that adversaries continued to evolve, creating a cat-and-mouse environment where technological and tactical advantage was constantly tested. From a human perspective, the high-intensity campaigns exacerbated civilian displacement and urban disruption. Neighborhoods in Damascus and Homs saw repeated evacuations, while streets became filled with debris, abandoned vehicles, and the aftermath of collateral damage. Families struggled to maintain daily routines amid fires, smoke, and explosions. Schools and markets closed frequently. Transportation networks were compromised, and the psychological weight of living under near constant threat became a defining feature of civilian life. By late 2018, the Israeli high-intensity campaigns had demonstrated several critical outcomes. Operationally, Iran and Hezbollah were unable to consolidate permanent infrastructure in Syria. Their supply chains disrupted and depots repeatedly destroyed. Syrian air defenses were degraded in a carefully calculated manner, allowing continued operational freedom for Israeli aircraft. Psychologically, civilians and adversaries alike were reminded of the persistent threat posed by Israel's strategic doctrine. The raids reinforced Israel's deterrence posture while illustrating the challenges of sustaining high-intensity military campaigns in an environment complicated by urban density, civilian populations, and the presence of foreign powers. In essence, 2017 to 2018 marked a maturation of Israel's strategy in Syria. Precision-guided strikes, technological innovation, and continuous operational pressure created a landscape in which enemy capabilities were constantly disrupted. Urban and rural areas bore repeated scars, and civilians navigated the dual challenges of civil war and foreign intervention. The campaigns of these years set the stage for the next phase of Israeli operations. The period of peak strategic pressure in 2019 to 2020, where frequency, intensity, and operational complexity would reach unprecedented levels. By 2019, the landscape of the Syrian conflict had evolved into a highly complex theater, where military, political, and technological factors intersected across urban, rural, and mountainous terrain. The civil war had left the Syrian state fragmented, while Iranian forces and Hezbollah had deepened their operational entrenchment, transferring advanced weaponry and establishing logistical networks throughout western Syria. Israel's strategy during this period shifted to peak operational intensity, with raids executed almost continuously, demonstrating both tactical precision and strategic messaging. The opening months of 2019 marked an escalation in frequency. Israeli aircraft moved in near-daily sorties, targeting convoys, depots, and urban compounds associated with Iranian military infrastructure. Damascus and its surrounding suburbs bore the brunt of these operations. Industrial zones housing missile components, chemical precursors, and advanced weaponry were systematically struck. From above, the city appeared as a network of crumbling warehouses, streets lined with debris, and smoke rising from multiple points across the urban landscape. The familiar silhouette of Damascus, its minarets, residential blocks, and industrial facades, was repeatedly punctuated by the flickering orange glow of fires ignited by precise strikes. Beyond the urban periphery, raids penetrated the mountains and plains of western Syria. Convoys moving weapons along desert roads or hidden in mountain passes were intercepted with exacting precision. Explosions scattered vehicles and ignited fuel caches, sending plumes of smoke spiraling into the night sky. Valleys amplified the concussive force of strikes, carrying tremors across villages that had previously been insulated from direct military engagement. Even remote communities, often considered marginal to the conflict, were drawn into the operational consequences of these raids, facing sudden destruction, fear, and displacement. The operational complexity during 2019 to 2020 was heightened by Syrian and Russian air defenses. Russian-made S-300 and S-400 systems had been deployed strategically, creating significant risk for Israeli aircraft. In response, Israeli operations integrated advanced electronic warfare measures, precision-guided munitions, and highly coordinated strike sequences. Pilots navigated narrow corridors through contested airspace, timing attacks to neutralize radar installations while simultaneously striking weapons depots. These operations demonstrated not only technological superiority but also an unprecedented level of operational synchronization, where intelligence, air command, and electronic countermeasures functioned as a cohesive system. The urban impact of these raids was stark. Entire blocks of warehouses, storage depots, and light industrial facilities were destroyed or severely damaged. Streets became littered with rubble, twisted metal, and the remnants of infrastructure that had once facilitated commerce and military logistics alike. Smoke hung persistently over neighborhoods, infiltrating homes and workplaces, while the sharp scent of scorched materials reminded residents of the omnipresent threat overhead. For civilians, the distinction between military and non-military space blurred. Areas previously considered safe, industrial parks, suburban roads, and even parts of residential districts became zones of vulnerability, altering patterns of daily life and movement. In addition to physical destruction, the psychological dimension of the raids intensified. The hum of approaching aircraft, the distant but unmistakable concussions of explosions, and the intermittent glow of fires created a perpetual state of anxiety among civilians. Families evacuated neighborhoods temporarily. Children grew up associating nightfall with imminent danger, and the urban environment itself was rendered alien by the repeated impact of military operations. The raids became both a tactical tool and a psychological instrument, reinforcing Israel's deterrent posture while embedding fear and uncertainty within the civilian population. The rural landscapes were similarly transformed. Supply convoys, often the lifelines of Iranian and Hezbollah forces, were subject to sudden, precise strikes. Desert roads, previously open and traversable, were punctuated by craters, burning wreckage, and scattered debris. Mountain passes echoed with the concussive force of explosions, reverberating across valleys and altering terrain that had long been used for military and civilian movement alike. These operations disrupted logistical networks decisively, forcing adversaries to reroute supply lines, disperse assets, and increase concealment. 2019 to 2020 also saw significant focus on strategic high-value targets, including missile research facilities, command centers, and storage hubs. Israeli intelligence identified key nodes where Iranian forces coordinated arms transfers and advised local militias. Raids were executed with surgical precision, often employing sequential strikes to first disable air defenses, then strike depots and command centers, and finally assess damage through reconnaissance drones. The result was a disruption of operational continuity. Supply chains were delayed, missile programs slowed, and command networks forced to adapt under persistent threat. The cumulative effect of these high-intensity campaigns was multifaceted. Operationally, Iran and Hezbollah were unable to consolidate permanent infrastructure in Syria, while Syrian air defenses were consistently degraded. Tactically, supply chains were fractured, convoys destroyed, and depots repeatedly rendered inoperative. Strategically, Israel's raids served as both a demonstration of military capability and a clear message regarding the consequences of entrenchment near its borders. For adversaries, this period marked a time of heightened vulnerability, requiring constant adaptation, dispersal, and concealment of assets. Civilian consequences were equally severe. Displacement increased as neighborhoods near industrial and military zones became unsafe. Streets were often impassable due to debris, collapsed walls, and damaged infrastructure. Markets and schools closed intermittently, while the psychological toll of living under near-constant aerial threat deepened. Families developed routines around air raid alarms, moving from home to safer areas at short notice, and the urban fabric itself became a map of recurrent destruction. The raids also impacted Syrian governance and reconstruction efforts. Infrastructure necessary for commerce, transportation, and basic services was repeatedly damaged, complicating post-conflict recovery. Power lines, water systems, and roads sustained intermittent destruction, prolonging hardship for civilian populations already strained by years of civil war. While Israel's objective was narrowly military, targeting Iranian and Hezbollah infrastructure, the broader consequences reshaped the social and economic landscape of affected regions. By the end of 2020, the period of peak strategic pressure had reinforced several critical dynamics. Israel demonstrated an operational capability unmatched in the region, executing near-daily raids with precision and minimal exposure. Iranian and Hezbollah forces were forced into constant adaptation, dispersing supply chains, hardening infrastructure, and relocating critical assets. Civilian populations endured repeated psychological and physical hardship, navigating streets and neighborhoods that bore the scars of sustained aerial bombardment. The raids set a precedent for persistent military engagement in Syria, illustrating both the potential of technologically advanced strikes to disrupt adversaries and the enduring costs of conflict on human life and urban landscapes. In essence, the 2019 to 2020 campaigns represented the culmination of Israel's preemptive strategy. High-frequency, technologically sophisticated raids that achieved tactical and strategic objectives while reshaping the operational, civilian, and psychological environment of Western Syria. Mountains, plains, and urban neighborhoods became theaters of sustained aerial engagement, leaving scars both visible and invisible that would influence the trajectory of conflict and deterrence in the years to follow. By 2021, the Syrian theater had settled into a tense equilibrium, a complex mosaic of fractured governance, entrenched militias, and foreign military actors vying for influence. Although the civil war's intensity had decreased in some regions, Iran and Hezbollah had strengthened certain positions, seeking to consolidate their logistical networks and missile infrastructure. In response, Israel maintained a policy of persistent engagement. Continuous, precise, and strategically calculated raids designed to disrupt adversaries, prevent permanent entrenchment, and reinforce deterrence. The operational tempo during these years reflected an evolution in strategy and technology. Israeli intelligence had become increasingly sophisticated, integrating satellite imagery, drone reconnaissance, cyber surveillance, and electronic signals intelligence. These capabilities allowed for near real-time monitoring of weapons depots, missile storage facilities, and command centers. As a result, raids were no longer sporadic. They were deliberate, synchronized, and adaptive, targeting both physical assets and operational networks while minimizing Israeli exposure and avoiding escalation with Russian forces stationed in Syria. Urban centers continued to bear the brunt of these operations. Damascus, Homs, and Aleppo, all already scarred by years of conflict, experienced renewed strikes on industrial zones and suburban warehouses. From above, the cities resembled intricate tapestries of destruction. Warehouses reduced to skeletal frames, streets choked with rubble, and plumes of smoke rising from multiple sites, mingling with the lingering haze of previous bombardments. the glow of fires reflected off distant walls, casting flickering shadows over apartment complexes and empty marketplaces. For civilians, the raids reinforced a sense of perpetual vulnerability. Streets once familiar were now unpredictable, with debris blocking roads, smoke obscuring visibility, and alarms prompting sudden evacuations. Beyond urban zones, the rural and mountainous regions of western Syria were central to Israel's operational focus. Convoys transporting advanced weaponry moved through desert roads, narrow mountain passes, and remote plains, all of which were subject to interception. Strikes in these areas were visually dramatic. Vehicles erupted in flames, plumes of smoke twisted into the night sky, and craters punctuated previously open terrain. Mountain valleys carried the sound of detonations for miles, reaching villages that had long avoided the direct violence of war. Even sparsely populated areas became psychologically and physically scarred by persistent raids. Farmers, shepherds, and isolated communities were forced to adapt, moving livestock and supplies to safer locations, rerouting travel, and navigating a landscape where sudden explosions had become a recurring reality. Technologically, the raids of 2021 to 2022 represented a refinement of previous strategies. Israeli aircraft were equipped with precision-guided munitions capable of destroying hardened facilities without widespread collateral damage. Electronic countermeasures were employed to neutralize Syrian and Russian radar systems, while drones provided reconnaissance and post-strike assessment. Sequential strike tactics were used to first degrade air defenses, then target weapons depots, and finally monitor the aftermath. The integration of intelligence, technology, and tactical innovation allowed Israel to maintain operational dominance even as adversaries attempted to adapt. The focus of these operations was multifaceted. Missile stockpiles, drone development facilities, and command centers were consistently targeted. Iranian forces sought to entrench permanently near Damascus and along the Lebanon-Syria border, transferring weapons and coordinating with Hezbollah to enhance regional influence. Israel's persistent engagement disrupted these efforts, forcing dispersal of resources, relocation of storage facilities, and modification of logistical patterns. Each strike delayed adversaries' operational plans and signaled that permanent consolidation would carry unacceptable costs. Civilians continued to experience profound consequences. Repeated raids compounded trauma, displacement, and disruption. Neighborhoods near industrial and military zones were evacuated frequently, while infrastructure, roads, water systems, and electricity suffered repeated damage. Markets closed intermittently. Schools operated under the constant threat of sudden aerial attacks, and families developed routines around alerts, alarms, and temporary relocation. The psychological impact was cumulative. The hum of aircraft overhead, the distant rumble of explosions, and the glow of fires across urban skylines became part of everyday life, creating a pervasive sense of unease. The rural and agricultural sectors also suffered. Convoys moving through open plains or along desert roads were consistently targeted, leading to disruption of supply chains, not only for military purposes, but also for civilian commerce and transport. Explosions left roads pocked with craters, vehicles overturned, and smoke lingering for hours. Farmers, traders, and local residents adapted by altering travel routes, relocating equipment, and avoiding previously reliable corridors. The landscape itself bore visible and persistent marks. Craters, burned-out vehicles, and scarred mountain passes became enduring reminders of Israel's operational reach. Throughout 2021 to 2022, Israeli raids continued to shape adversary behavior. Iranian and Hezbollah forces dispersed assets, relocated command centers, and increased reliance on camouflage and underground storage. Supply chains became more complex and slower, requiring additional resources to move weapons safely. Syrian air defenses were periodically degraded, reducing the effectiveness of anti-aircraft systems while forcing technological adaptation. Israel's persistent engagement demonstrated the efficacy of sustained pressure. Even as adversaries attempted to consolidate, operational disruptions continued, illustrating the strategic leverage afforded by precise, intelligence-driven military action. The high frequency of raids also reinforced Israel's deterrence posture. By demonstrating the capacity to strike consistently, accurately, and without direct exposure to retaliation, Israel conveyed a clear message. Attempts to entrench or transfer advanced weaponry in Syria would incur repeated tangible costs. The psychological dimension was significant. Adversaries faced not only the destruction of material assets, but also the constant uncertainty of when and where the next strike would occur. This uncertainty reshaped decision-making, forcing conservative operational planning and limiting aggressive expansion or consolidation. By the end of 2022, persistent engagement had created a complex and multi-layered operational environment. Urban landscapes were repeatedly scarred, with industrial districts reduced to rubble and streets rendered partially unusable. Rural terrain bore visible evidence of repeated strikes, with craters, damaged roads, and destroyed convoys punctuating plains and mountain passes. Civilians navigated an environment defined by uncertainty and danger, adapting daily routines to accommodate recurring aerial threats. For Israeli forces, the combination of intelligence, precision technology, and sustained operational tempo achieved strategic objectives, disrupting adversary consolidation and reinforcing deterrence. In essence, 2021 to 2022 demonstrated the transition from episodic high-intensity campaigns to continuous, persistent engagement. Israel leveraged technological sophistication, operational coordination, and intelligence superiority to disrupt adversary capabilities while maintaining a careful balance to avoid escalation with Russia or the Syrian government. The human, urban, and rural impacts were profound, embedding a lasting footprint of disruption, displacement, and psychological tension. Persistent engagement during these years solidified Israel's operational doctrine in Syria. Continuous, preemptive, and technologically precise intervention to shape the battlefield, prevent consolidation of hostile forces, and reinforce deterrence along its northern border. By 2023, Israel's operations in Syria had entered a phase defined less by rapid escalation and more by methodical continuity and adaptive strategy. The northern frontier remained a zone of enduring tension, where intelligence-driven precision strikes continued to disrupt Iranian and Hezbollah entrenchment while managing the complex geopolitical presence of Russian forces. Syria itself, while no longer engulfed in the intense civil warfare of earlier years, remained fragmented. Government control was uneven, and militias, foreign advisors, and proxy networks occupied key strategic zones. Within this environment, Israel's raids reflected a blend of operational persistence, technological innovation, and calculated restraint. The operational tempo in this period emphasized both consistency and sophistication. Israeli intelligence networks, increasingly integrated with drone surveillance, satellite imagery, and electronic monitoring, allowed for the precise tracking of missile depots, drone programs, and weapons convoys. Targets were identified with remarkable specificity: warehouses storing long-range missile components, research facilities for precision-guided systems, and command nodes coordinating supply transfers. Israeli aircraft conducted strikes under the cover of night, often in tightly coordinated sequences, designed to first neutralize air defenses, then strike critical facilities, and finally assess damage through reconnaissance drones. Urban zones remained central to these operations. Damascus and Homs, already marked by years of repeated raids, continued to witness destruction of industrial compounds, suburban warehouses, and peripheral command centers. From above, the cityscape resembled a patchwork of smoke plumes, crumbling structures, and streets intermittently illuminated by fires from targeted strikes. The physical landscape was continuously reshaped, roads scarred by explosions, warehouses reduced to skeletal frameworks, and neighborhoods temporarily evacuated by wary civilians. Streets, once familiar, became corridors of uncertainty, forcing residents to navigate disrupted transportation networks and debris-littered avenues. Beyond urban centers, rural and mountainous terrain remained strategically critical. Convoys moving along desert roads or through isolated mountain passes were subject to frequent interception. Explosions sent vehicles tumbling into craters, igniting plumes of smoke that spiraled high above valleys. The geography of strikes, rugged mountains, wide plains, and narrow passes, magnified the visual and auditory impact. Small villages and farms were often caught in the ripple effects. Windows shattered, livestock scattered, and roads rendered impassable. Even in sparsely populated areas, the constant threat of sudden, precise strikes introduced a pervasive sense of unpredictability, compelling communities to alter long-established routines. Technological adaptation became a defining feature of raids during 2023 to 2025. Israeli forces increasingly integrated unmanned aerial systems into their operations, using drones for real-time surveillance, electronic countermeasure deployment, and post-strike assessment. Precision-guided munitions were calibrated to minimize collateral damage while maximizing destruction of hardened targets. Electronic warfare techniques disabled radar and tracking systems, creating temporary corridors of operational freedom for aircraft to penetrate deep into contested zones. These innovations allowed Israel to maintain tactical superiority, even as adversaries attempted to adapt by dispersing assets, reinforcing bunkers, and relocating supply depots. The targets of these raids evolved as well. Missile storage facilities and command nodes remained primary objectives, but new priorities emerged. Research facilities focused on drone development, rocket assembly areas, and infrastructure supporting unmanned aerial operations became focal points. By disrupting these programs, Israel sought to prevent long-term enhancement of adversary capabilities that could pose a strategic threat. Each strike not only destroyed material assets, but also introduced operational uncertainty, forcing Iranian and Hezbollah networks to continually adjust their logistics and deployment strategies. the psychological and human dimension remained profound. Civilians living in urban and suburban zones experienced repeated disruption, displacement, and heightened anxiety. Industrial and commercial districts bore visible scars. Collapsed structures, debris-littered streets, and smoke lingering from previous strikes. Families navigated a cityscape marked by uncertainty, with daily routines punctuated by the hum of aircraft, the distant concussions of explosions, and the glow of fires visible across the horizon. Even when not directly targeted, civilians lived in a state of heightened alert. The psychological burden of recurring raids compounding years of conflict and instability. Rural populations faced parallel challenges. Convoys transporting supplies or weapons were intercepted in remote valleys and plains, leaving roads obstructed by wreckage and craters. Farmers and small communities adapted by rerouting travel, relocating livestock, and avoiding traditional corridors. The landscape itself bore the imprint of conflict. Burned-out vehicles, scorched earth, and visible craters punctuated once familiar roads and valleys. The visual evidence of repeated strikes reinforced both the physical and psychological imprint of sustained military engagement. Strategically, the raids of 2023 to 2025 emphasized continuity in disruption. Iranian forces, unable to consolidate permanent infrastructure, were forced to maintain dispersed supply networks. Hezbollah relied on increasingly complex logistics to avoid repeated destruction. Syrian air defenses, while reinforced with the modern systems, continued to be degraded by precise targeted operations. Israel's sustained engagement demonstrated the efficacy of continuous, intelligence-driven pressure in shaping adversary behavior, reinforcing deterrence, and preventing the establishment of a permanent threat along the northern border. The cumulative consequences of these years were significant. Urban and rural infrastructure remained scarred. Supply chains were disrupted, and civilian populations continued to navigate environments defined by unpredictability and danger. The persistent raids also shaped the operational strategies of adversaries. Dispersed storage facilities, reinforced bunkers, and clandestine logistics became standard, reflecting a response to sustained preemptive pressure. Israel's operations thus achieved a dual objective: disrupting material capabilities while imposing a psychological and operational burden that constrained adversary initiative. In essence, the period of 2023 to 2025 represented both continuity and adaptation. Israel maintained the tempo and precision of prior operations while incorporating technological innovation, operational refinements, and strategic foresight. Mountains, plains, and urban neighborhoods remain theaters of sustained engagement, leaving visible scars and invisible psychological marks. Civilians navigated a landscape of uncertainty, displacement, and recurring destruction, while adversaries contended with the ongoing challenge of operating under persistent aerial threat. The raids reinforced Israel's deterrence doctrine, disrupted enemy consolidation, and illustrated the long-term dynamics of sustained preemptive engagement in a complex and multifaceted theater of conflict. The sustained series of Israeli raids on Syria over more than a decade left indelible marks on the country's physical, social, and strategic landscape. From 2013 through 2025, these operations disrupted Iranian and Hezbollah entrenchment, reshaped urban and rural terrain, and imposed both immediate and long-term consequences on civilian populations. The effects were multifaceted: tangible destruction of material assets, pervasive psychological impact, and shifts in military and geopolitical calculus. Physically, the raids transformed the Syrian environment. Cities such as Damascus, Homs, and Aleppo bore repeated scars from airstrikes targeting industrial districts, suburban depots, and peripheral command centers. Streets were punctuated by craters. Buildings were reduced to skeletal frameworks, and debris blocked vital roads, disrupting transportation and commerce. Industrial facilities, once hubs of manufacturing or logistical activity, were frequently rendered inoperative. The destruction was not limited to military targets. Even carefully selected precision strikes produced ripple effects that damaged nearby civilian structures, utilities, and infrastructure. Water networks, electrical grids, and roads often required reconstruction, further straining a country already devastated by years of civil war. Rural and mountainous areas were similarly affected. Supply convoys moving through deserts, plains, and mountain passes were consistently intercepted, leaving roads scarred with craters, burned-out vehicles, and twisted metal. Villages in proximity to these routes faced both direct and indirect consequences. Buildings suffered shock damage, livestock and crops were disrupted, and communities were forced to relocate temporarily or permanently. The repeated targeting of strategic corridors created a dynamic where civilians were in constant proximity to the operational footprint of war, forcing adjustments to mobility, settlement patterns, and economic activity. The psychological impact on civilian populations was profound and cumulative. Residents of urban and suburban areas endured a pervasive sense of vulnerability. The intermittent hum of approaching aircraft, the sudden concussions of distant explosions, and the glow of fires across cityscapes became omnipresent reminders of risk. Families developed complex routines to cope with uncertainty, evacuating neighborhoods, navigating debris-littered streets, and adapting to intermittent disruption of essential services. In rural regions, fear and anxiety similarly permeated daily life, with residents altering traditional travel routes and farming practices to mitigate exposure to sudden strikes. The constant awareness of potential danger created an enduring psychological footprint, embedding stress and caution into the fabric of civilian life. Operationally, the raids achieved Israel's primary objectives with remarkable consistency. Iranian and Hezbollah forces were prevented from consolidating permanent infrastructure, deploying advanced weaponry, or establishing logistical networks with relative security. Depots were destroyed or disrupted, convoys intercepted, and command centers targeted repeatedly. Syrian air defenses, although reinforced with modern systems, were frequently degraded, maintaining operational corridors for Israeli aircraft. The raids demonstrated the efficacy of precision-driven preemptive engagement, combining intelligence, technology, and tactical innovation to shape adversary behavior and limit operational freedom. At the same time, the raids forced a transformation in adversary strategy. Iranian forces and Hezbollah adapted by dispersing weapons, hardening facilities, and relocating command nodes. Supply chains became increasingly complex, with greater emphasis on concealment and redundancy. Syrian military planners integrated lessons from repeated strikes, dispersing air defenses and reinforcing key installations. These adaptations illustrated the dynamic nature of the conflict. Israel's raids imposed operational constraints, but adversaries continuously evolved to mitigate vulnerabilities, creating a persistent cycle of action and counteraction. Strategically, the raids reshaped the regional balance of power along the Israel-Syria border. By preventing the entrenchment of hostile forces, Israel reinforced its deterrence doctrine, sending a clear signal regarding the costs of consolidation near its territory. The repeated, precise, and technologically sophisticated operations demonstrated the capability to act decisively without triggering large-scale escalation, maintaining a delicate equilibrium in a region fraught with volatility. The raids also conveyed an implicit warning to other regional actors. Attempts to establish advanced military infrastructure in Syria would be met with persistent and precise preemptive action. Beyond immediate military outcomes, the raids had long-term consequences for Syrian society and reconstruction efforts. Urban and industrial destruction slowed recovery, complicated governance, and disrupted civilian livelihoods. Markets, schools, and public services were intermittently affected, prolonging hardship for already vulnerable populations. In rural areas, the repeated targeting of transportation and supply routes hindered economic activity and forced communities to adapt to persistent insecurity. These consequences underscore the broader human cost of sustained military engagement, demonstrating that the tactical and strategic success of operations can coincide with profound societal disruption. The raids also influenced regional geopolitics. They underscored Israel's willingness and capability to operate independently in Syrian airspace, even in proximity to Russian forces, shaping the strategic calculations of Tehran, Damascus, and Hezbollah. The persistent disruption of Iranian supply networks and missile infrastructure curtailed adversary ambitions, reinforcing Israel's northern defense posture. At the same time, these operations highlighted the limitations of purely military measures. While effective in degrading infrastructure and complicating enemy planning, they could not resolve the underlying enmity between the states or address the broader instability in Syria and the Levant. Ultimately, the effects and aftermath of the raids reflect a complex interplay between operational success, civilian impact, and strategic signaling. Israel achieved significant tactical and strategic objectives, preventing permanent entrenchment of hostile forces, degrading logistical networks, and reinforcing deterrence. However, these successes came at a cost to the physical, economic, and psychological environment of Syria, leaving cities, towns, and rural areas marked by repeated destruction and enduring uncertainty. The raids shaped military doctrines, influenced adversary adaptation, and left a persistent imprint on the lives of civilians caught in the intersection of technology, strategy, and conflict. The long-term legacy of these raids is therefore dual. Operationally and strategically, Israel achieved measurable success in shaping the battlefield, disrupting adversary plans, and signaling deterrence. Socially and physically, Syria endured repeated destruction, displacement, and psychological trauma, demonstrating the complex consequences of sustained, technologically advanced military operations in an environment already destabilized by civil war. The interplay of these factors, the combination of precise tactical achievement and enduring humanitarian impact, defines the multifaceted aftermath of Israel's decade-long campaign of raids in Syria. The decade-long series of Israeli raids on Syrian territory represents a striking example of modern preemptive military strategy, where precision, intelligence, and operational foresight were applied to shape the battlefield, disrupt adversary networks, and reinforce deterrence along a volatile frontier. From the earliest strikes in 2013 to the persistent engagements of 2025, Israel's operations were marked by continuity, adaptation, and technological sophistication, reflecting both the enduring enmity between the two states and the complex dynamics of the Syrian conflict. The raids unfolded across a landscape already fractured by civil war. Urban centers, Damascus, Homs, and Aleppo, experienced repeated disruption, with industrial districts reduced to skeletal frameworks, streets littered with debris, and neighborhoods intermittently evacuated. The psychological imprint on civilians was pervasive. The constant hum of approaching aircraft, the distant roar of explosions, and the glow of fires in the night sky became an inescapable part of everyday life. In rural areas and mountainous passes, convoys were destroyed, roads cratered, and communities forced to adapt to a persistent threat that rendered previously safe spaces precarious and uncertain. Operationally, the raids achieved their central objectives. Iranian forces and Hezbollah were unable to consolidate permanent positions. Missile depots were repeatedly neutralized and logistical networks disrupted. Syrian air defenses, even when reinforced with advanced systems, were degraded sufficiently to allow Israel to operate with consistent freedom and precision. Each strike reinforced the deterrence principle, signaling the consequences of attempts to entrench military power near Israel's borders while demonstrating the effectiveness of intelligence-driven, technologically advanced aerial campaigns. Yet alongside these tactical and strategic successes existed enduring costs. Civilian populations bore the brunt of repeated disruption. Infrastructure suffered cumulative damage, and the physical and psychological landscape of Syria was reshaped. Streets, industrial zones, and rural roads were scarred by craters, fires, and wreckage, while residents navigated the tension between survival and adaptation in a setting defined by recurring uncertainty. The raids, while limited in scope relative to full-scale conflict, illustrate the human consequences inherent in sustained, preemptive military engagement. Strategically, the campaign underscores the broader dynamics of the Israel-Syria enmity. Historical rivalries over territory, ideology, and regional influence have persisted for decades. Yet the modern expression of this hostility in the form of aerial raids reflects a shift toward technologically mediated conflict. Israel leveraged intelligence superiority, precision-guided munitions, and operational innovation to assert control over strategic variables while avoiding direct escalation with major powers present in Syria. The campaign demonstrates how contemporary military doctrine can integrate technological advantage with historical understanding to achieve strategic objectives without conventional occupation or prolonged ground warfare. The tale of the raids also highlights the adaptive nature of conflict. Iranian and Hezbollah forces responded by dispersing resources, relocating depots, and hardening facilities, illustrating the iterative cycle of action and counteraction that defines modern asymmetrical warfare. Civilians, too, adapted, developing routines to cope with uncertainty and navigating environments scarred by repeated strikes. These adaptations underscore the layered and dynamic nature of modern conflict, where operational success intersects with enduring social and infrastructural consequences. In conclusion, the Israeli raids on Syria over the period from 2013 to 2025 represent a calculated, persistent, and technologically advanced campaign shaped by historical enmity, strategic necessity, and the evolving conditions of the Syrian civil war. The raids achieved significant tactical and strategic objectives, preventing the consolidation of hostile forces and reinforcing Israel's deterrence posture. At the same time, they left a lasting imprint on Syria's urban, rural, and psychological landscape, illustrating the profound human and infrastructural consequences of sustained military intervention. The campaign serves as a case study in modern preemptive strategy, a combination of intelligence, precision, and persistent engagement capable of shaping adversary behavior while simultaneously reshaping the terrain, both physical and social, upon which conflict unfolds. If you found this deep dive into the Israeli raids on Syria insightful, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more detailed historical analyses. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share your thoughts in the comments. How do you think these operations shaped the region? And don't forget to check out our other videos for more in-depth looks at historical conflicts and their lasting impact. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.